Hello everyone. Hope you're ready for another video here on a random story I found interesting in the NFL. Of course, we've now transitioned to doing basically a video a month about something non-Wisconsin sports related. So now is this time for this month. In 2006, the Drew Brees era officially started in New Orleans. The Saints at this point in time were one of the worst franchises of all time, but ready for a fresh start with a young quarterback who already had prior success with the Chargers. The Saints had one of their best seasons in 2006, finishing 10-6 and going all the way to the NFC Championship. This suddenly became the new norm for the Saints, as after they had just 5 playoff seasons before Drew Brees, they made it 9 times with him being the starting quarterback. The Drew Brees era reached its climax in 2009 when the Saints beat the Colts in the Super Bowl to get their first Lombardi trophy. While things were looking up for the Saints, quite the opposite was happening at this time for the St. Louis Rams. After putting up some amazing offensive seasons with the greatest show on turf and winning a Super Bowl themselves, the Rams quickly fell off in the mid-2000s. The Rams did not have a single playoff appearance from 2005 to 2016, which included a 3-year stretch from 07 to 09, going just 6-42. Times were getting really tough in St. Louis for the Rams fans, although there was one catch to this. Before I get into the rare times in the late 2000s/early 2010s where the Rams actually found success, I figure it would be good to look at the Rams seasons offensively around this time, from 2007 to 2016. Right away, a couple of things should jump out, with obviously several really bad seasons standing out. Nothing tops 2009 when the Rams averaged under 11 points per game, as they have the distinction of the only NFL offense to average under 12, let alone 11 points per game since 2007. They had other horrendous seasons as well, with their 2011 season being the second worst since 2007 at just over 12 points per game. 2007, 2008, and 2016 are a few other seasons that stand out as being quite bad. With other horrendous offenses existing as well, it might come to a shock that the Rams had the lowest points per game of all offenses in the NFL from 2007 to 2016, even worse than teams like the Browns, Jaguars, and Raiders. It doesn't take much analyzing to see that the Rams offensively were on a different level of bad at this time. Now flipping back to the other side of the story with the Saints, they were on a different level of good in the same time period, and really in the Drew Brees era as a whole. Throughout Drew Brees' career there, the Saints averaged 28.1 points per game, ranking second just behind the Patriots. The Saints were consistently good offense throughout this time period, averaging no worse than 23.7 points per game in an entire season during his career there. However, one thing did plague the Saints on a relatively consistent basis during this time. That was their defense, which likely if elite could have brought several more Super Bowls to New Orleans. While they had some solid seasons, the defense of the Saints never surpassed 19 points per game allowed, and also averaged over 28 points per game allowed in 3 separate seasons. Despite the offense consistently delivering, it can be seen why the Saints had several 7-win seasons in the prime of Drew Brees' career. Despite the fact that the Saints' defense might not have been great, and that their offense did have to carry them to a lot of wins, you'd think against a team like the Rams with as bad of an offense that they had, that the Saints could throw in some stress-free wins. I mean, after all, the Rams, as mentioned, had the worst offense in the league from 2007 to 2016, and the Saints' offense was consistently one of the best in the same time period. Well, this did not exactly happen, or at least to the consistency that one might expect. The Saints had several key losses to the Rams in this time that, if the result were flipped, could have changed playoff seeding in the NFC drastically. As alluded to earlier, despite the Rams having some of the worst offensive seasons in NFL history in the late 2000s and early 2010s, there does seem to be one common denominator for when their offense wakes up. You guessed it, the Saints. Let's look back at some of the Rams' worst offensive seasons in this stretch, and if anything jumps out as far as their best performance of that season. Starting in 2007, when the Rams averaged just over 16 points per game, their highest total was 37 points in a 37-29 win against, you guessed it, the Saints. After an 0-8 start to this season, the Rams came ready to play here in New Orleans, with Mark Bulger throwing over 300 yards, as well as having a 125 rating, and Torrey Holt leading the way with receiving for 124 yards. Next, let's look at the Rams' second worst season in this stretch in 2011. They averaged just 12.1 points per game this season and are the most recent NFL franchise to score under 200 points in a singular season. Despite this, if you look at their game log, they happened to score season-high 31 points against the Saints. In this game, Drew Brees did struggle for the Saints, but it was Steven Jackson leading the way for the Rams with 159 yards and 2 rushing touchdowns. Now, let's look at one more standout bad season by the Rams offense, which was in 2009, where they won just one game and averaged under 11 points scored per game. The Rams had an insanely low highest point total this season at 23, but you can, I'm sure at this point, guess who it was against. Once again, the Saints. Now, this time they did lose, but still to be that competitive as a 1-15 team against the Super Bowl champions, that is quite alarming. Mark Bulger once again performed well against the Saints, throwing nearly 300 yards and 2 touchdowns. Steven Jackson also dominated with 131 yards and a touchdown. There are also less extreme examples of this for the bad Rams offenses against the Saints. For example, in 2016, the Rams' first year in Los Angeles, they averaged a whopping 14 points per game. Now, even though Brees and the Saints offense dominated when they faced the Rams that year, the Rams had one of their better offensive performances of the season as well, scoring 21 points. This was tied for their third most of the season, and their most after Week 6. Stats like this gives you an idea why the Saints did not win more Super Bowls with Drew Brees at quarterback. Sure, these games didn't completely disrupt their seasons, but they, I'm sure, had a loss of confidence that they are doing this against one of the worst teams in the league. Especially by 2011, with this pattern in full force, every Saints game against the Rams came with full pressure for New Orleans, even if the Rams were awful. This is a prime example of the adage that any given Sunday, any team can win. Even if you are looking at one of the best quarterbacks and offenses in history, if the quarterback is just a little bit off and they don't have a solid enough defense to back them up, the team could still be in trouble. This even includes going up against one of the worst teams of the era, in this case, the Rams. However, with a team of players who made the NFL, anything can happen. For the Saints in the Drew Brees era, they never felt comfortable, regardless of situation, against the Rams.